Throughout the three-week offensive in Gaza, there were claims about Israel's use of controversial weapons in a densely populated area and the deadly effect on civilians. Now, Channel 4 News has evidence that shells containing white phosphorus, which can burn through clothing and stick to the skin, were used, possibly against international law. Flechette missiles deployed by the Americans in Vietnam also appear to have been fired. They're not supposed to be used in civilian areas either, but there's evidence some civilians were hit. Civilians have also been killed in attacks that may have involved dime bombs. None of these three weapons is explicitly banned under international humanitarian law, but the way they are used could contravene laws meant to protect civilians in conflict, specifically in built-up areas like Gaza. White phosphorus ignites on contact with oxygen. Flechettes expel razor-sharp darts. Dime bombs cause large blasts over small areas. This report from our Foreign Affairs correspondent Jonathan Miller in Gaza contains images which some of you may find disturbing.
Oh, my darling Mohammed. She's lamenting the death of her grandson. We won't forgive the Jews, she wails, for what's happened to us and our land. Mohammed's family claims he and 4 other family members died in a firestorm of white phosphorus, which fell on their home when a shell crashed through the roof at 4 p.m. on the 2nd of January. Having denied it was using white phosphorus here, Israel has now acknowledged it was. On Monday, the UN told Channel 4 News that this was white phosphorus. 4 shells exploded above a UN-run school-cum-refugee sanctuary. It says the same weapon was used in the attack on Gaza's UNHQ. Now, there's a growing clamour for full disclosure of what other weapons Israel might have deployed. Weird weapons. Evidence backed by an unusual pattern of injuries. This is Mohammed's mother, Halima. She's in terrible pain from her burns. Her grandchild looks on in horror. The house next door was bombed, she said, just as they'd sat down to eat. They made a run for it.
When we got to the sitting room, the phosphorus bomb exploded. It sliced off my husband's head and killed my 14-year-old son, Abid. I was holding a baby girl of 15 months and a 5-year-old. Then the fire started. The whole family was inside. The first thing the fire got was my face. I covered it with my hand and the baby girl fell down into the fire. Then I lost my hearing. I was in a severe pain because of burns from the fire and it smelled bad. I lost my husband and 5 sons. I fell down and I couldn't feel anything. I thought I had gone blind. The house was filled with smoke. My clothes and hair were burnt. And all 3 rockets hit the house. The smoke was so thick you couldn't see.
It's the smoke that makes white phosphorus a useful battlefield weapon. It's designed to provide a smokescreen for advancing troops. But, as Halima's surviving son Mahmoud showed us, it's highly volatile, flaming up on exposure to oxygen. The airburst version scatters over a wide area. It's illegal to use it indiscriminately in civilian areas.
In these cases, when we first put the water or saline in it becomes worse and the patient cries from pain. We notice the smoke coming out from the wound. This means that the burning process continues for hours. We don't know what type of weapons is it. Maybe more serious, more dangerous weapons even has been used.
Other strange new injuries began to appear on civilian victims. Some seem to have been pockmarked by tiny, tiny little pieces of shrapnel. At 5:30 in the afternoon of Thursday, the 8th of January, Ehsan Jabbar Abu al-Najjar was standing with her husband and her mother on the balcony of their plush 7th floor flat in Gaza City, watching Israeli F-16s bombing. Suddenly, the balcony itself was struck by a missile. But it was no ordinary missile. It killed Ehsan's husband and mother and exploded in this room. All it left behind were tiny telltale pockmarks all over the walls.
Once that warhead explodes, you're talking about a tiny area of focused heat and pressure that does all the killing.
This man was a top munitions expert at the Pentagon.
He's after any remaining fragments of shrapnel because there's suspicion this may have been some sort of dime bomb, a dense, inert metal explosive, known for their highly concentrated power and vicious impact.
The weapon comes in here, she explodes on contact. You're looking at a very focused area of an explosion. We're sure we have a hole here, but the rest of these walls are standing very, very intact. Nothing in the ceiling, the floor is solid, and this is an incredibly, incredibly focused weapon.
Israel's alleged to deploy dime bombs in targeted killings, but no one knows what they look like because they seem to completely disintegrate on impact, leaving almost no evidence. This is Ehsan and her late husband, Ehab. She has 15 minute pieces of shrapnel lodged in her back and her legs. The embedded fragments show up clearly on X-rays. There's concern that they may have toxic side effects.
I fell to the ground. I tried to move my fingers. When I turned my head, I saw my mother. Her body was in parts. I looked for my husband. I couldn't see him. I realized he must have been blown off the balcony. Everything on this X-ray are pieces from that bomb, and I still have these bits left in my body.
Doctors are having to deal with a whole range of injuries caused by unusual weapons. Abu Arafa's son was an ambulance driver, killed by a rocket. They're in mourning. When his son was buried, the funeral cortege was bombed, and the bomb contained thousands of tiny darts, known as flachettes. He showed us one, still buried in the wall of his house.
During the funeral?
He told us 7 people were killed by this flechette bomb. You know, he added, if my son had ever met an Israeli who was injured, he would have helped him. It was his duty. An investigator from Amnesty International has been collating evidence of civilian killings and the type of weapons used to kill them.
These, again, obviously, as you can see, they're designed they're designed to penetrate, and they penetrate into the body deeply. They get embedded in not just in the flesh, but in the bones. So this is what these do. And again, we've seen a number of people being killed from flechettes. Certainly the first case that we saw was back in 2001 when 3 Bedouin women were killed in a village south of Gaza City. And the last incident when we are aware that it was used, it was in April of 2008 when the Reuters cameraman Fadl Shana was killed pretty much on camera as he was filming by a flechette that was fired by a tank nearby.
Our interview's interrupted by shelling from an Israeli naval patrol boat. This goes on for hours, every day, despite the ceasefire. Warning shots at Gaza's fishermen, the Israelis told us. None of the less conventional weapons Israel deploys is explicitly banned. But lawyers and human rights investigators say their indiscriminate use in heavily populated civilian areas could violate customary international humanitarian law. Jonathan Miller, Channel 4 News, Gaza.